And if you open your eyes and really look at the world around you, without the distractions, without the noise, you'll notice something unsettling, something that presses on the soul with an urgency that can't be ignored. There is a rapid unraveling taking place, a kind of acceleration of chaos that doesn't follow the normal rhythms of human history. We're not just witnessing isolated events of war, economic instability, or moral collapse. We're watching these events stack on top of one another, creating a suffocating weight that many feel but few can articulate. It is as if something ancient and dark has been stirred, pushing humanity closer to a breaking point. What's remarkable is that this isn't new. Civilizations rise and fall, that's always been true. But the pace, this frantic, desperate speed at which things are falling apart, is different, and it leads to a psychological truth that's often overlooked. Human beings are not equipped to process sustained global trauma. The human mind is designed for localized, manageable threats, not the constant bombardment of worldwide crises unfolding in real time. This leaves people not just overwhelmed but paralyzed, numb, apathetic, or frantically distracted to avoid the crushing anxiety that looms over them. But what if this acceleration isn't random? What if the very chaos we're witnessing is itself a sign, not merely of political shifts or economic downturns, but of something spiritual, something transcendent? The ancient texts speak of a time when the very fabric of reality would seem to unravel, a time marked by wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes in diverse places, and the love of many growing cold. We are living in that time, and this presents a profound challenge to the individual. How do you remain grounded in the middle of chaos? How do you preserve your integrity, your sanity, your moral compass when everything familiar seems to be crumbling? The answer is deceptively simple but infinitely difficult. You wake up. You stop numbing yourself with distractions and comforts that no longer serve you. You stop lying to yourself about the state of the world, about the state of your own heart. You face the truth, both the darkness outside and the shadows within. This is not an easy path. Waking up means stepping into discomfort. It means acknowledging that the systems we've built, economically, socially, even spiritually, are shaking because they were built on faulty foundations. And in the end, everything built on lies must fall. This is not to be feared but to be understood as necessary. Collapse precedes renewal. Destruction precedes rebirth, but only for those who are awake enough to see it. The psychological dimension here is crucial. Carl Jung once said that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it appears outside as fate. The global chaos is not just geopolitical, it is the external manifestation of millions of unresolved internal battles. The narcissism, the greed, the apathy, the spiritual emptiness that defines so much of modern life, these have created a psychic field ripe for collapse. And the individual's task is to resist contributing to that darkness by transforming their own heart and mind first. We're in a moment where personal transformation isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity. The acceleration of global chaos is like a divine alarm clock ringing louder and louder, and every time we hit snooze, the next wake-up call grows more violent. The choice before us is stark: continue sleepwalking toward destruction, or awaken, even if that awakening is painful. It takes immense courage to choose the latter, to step out of the mass hypnosis and begin to live with moral clarity, to speak truth in a culture addicted to lies, to act with integrity when corruption is the norm. These are revolutionary acts, and they are the acts required of us now, because what's at stake isn't just personal well-being, it's the very soul of humanity. If we continue to ignore the signs, if we continue to pretend that what's happening around us is normal, we risk falling into the abyss. But if we wake up, if we have the courage to confront both the external chaos and our internal complicity in it, we become something unbreakable. We become, in the truest sense, the light that shines in the darkness. And so, I leave you with this: when the world is unraveling, your task is not to panic, not to despair, but to stand up straighter, to speak more clearly, and to live more authentically. Because sometimes it is only when everything is falling apart that we finally remember who we were meant to be. One of the most dangerous developments we're witnessing in this time of acceleration and chaos is the systematic erosion of truth. Not just the kind of factual truth that concerns itself with science or politics, but something far deeper, the philosophical and moral foundation upon which individuals and societies stand. And when that foundation crumbles, people don't just lose their way in the world, they lose themselves. The rise of deception isn't something that happened overnight. It's been a gradual, almost imperceptible process. Little by little, we've tolerated half-truths, allowed lies to pass unchallenged, and replaced objective reality with emotional convenience. And every time we do this, we chip away at the very ground we stand on. We tell ourselves stories that make us feel good, rather than confront the uncomfortable reality that some things are right and some things are wrong, some things build life, and some things destroy it. This is not just a cultural issue, it's a deeply psychological one. Human beings have an innate desire to avoid discomfort, and nowhere is that more obvious than in our relationship with truth. The truth often demands change. It demands responsibility, and these are heavy burdens to carry, especially in an age where comfort and distraction are available at the touch of a button. So people choose the lie. They choose the fantasy. They choose to live in carefully constructed illusions because the alternative, facing the raw, unsanitized truth, is too painful. But here's the problem: reality doesn't care whether or not we acknowledge it. The truth exists, independent of our feelings about it. And eventually, those who build their lives on lies will find themselves crushed under the weight of their own deception. This is precisely what we are witnessing on a massive scale right now. Institutions are collapsing, relationships are disintegrating, mental health is in freefall, not because the external world is inherently cruel, but because people have forgotten how to live in alignment with truth. There's a spiritual dimension to this as well. The ancient scriptures warn of a time when people would exchange the truth for a lie, when good would be called evil and evil would be called good. And if you look carefully, that inversion of values is already here. We glorify self-centeredness and call it empowerment. We elevate materialism and call it success. We celebrate moral relativism and call it freedom. But deep down, there's a gnawing emptiness that no amount of distraction or indulgence can fill. And that emptiness is a call, a wake-up call, to return to what is real, to return to what is true. This isn't just a philosophical exercise, it's a survival mechanism. When truth disappears, meaning disappears. And when meaning disappears, despair takes its place. That is why we're seeing an epidemic of anxiety, depression, and hopelessness. It's not merely a chemical imbalance, it's a crisis of meaning, a crisis rooted in the abandonment of truth. And so the question becomes, how do we as individuals push back against this tide of deception? How do we anchor ourselves in truth when the very concept of truth is under attack? The answer, difficult though it may be, begins within. It begins with radical honesty. It begins by refusing to lie to others, but most importantly, to ourselves. This means confronting the parts of ourselves that we would rather avoid: the pettiness, the resentment, the entitlement, the pride. It means facing the shadow within and bringing it into the light. And when we do that, something remarkable happens. We become less susceptible to the lies of the world because we are no longer living in lies ourselves. Integrity, once re-established internally, becomes a shield against external deception. But there's more. To truly stand for truth requires courage, real courage. The kind of courage that makes you willing to be disliked, misunderstood, or even persecuted. Because when you speak the truth in a world addicted to lies, you will inevitably provoke discomfort, both in others and in yourself. But that discomfort is the price of freedom, and freedom, true freedom, is worth it. We must also remember that truth is not just about what we say, but how we live. Every action, every choice is either a reflection of truth or a denial of it. When you choose to live with integrity, when your words and your deeds align, you become a beacon in the darkness. You become the living embodiment of the very values that others have abandoned. And this has a ripple effect. It inspires, it challenges, it awakens. And so I'll leave you with this thought: in times of great deception, telling the truth is not just a moral act, It is a revolutionary one. And when you choose to live in truth, no matter how small your circle, no matter how quiet your voice may seem, you participate in the great struggle between light and darkness. You become part of the solution. You become someone who stands when others fall, and in the end, it is those who stand in truth who will endure. As we move deeper into this period of profound instability, what we are witnessing is not merely the collapse of financial systems or the breakdown of political institutions. Those are symptoms. What's really happening is something far more fundamental, the very foundations of how we understand the world, how we relate to one another, and how we orient ourselves toward meaning are being shaken. The ground beneath us is trembling, and it's not accidental, it's not random. It is, in many ways, necessary. Human beings tend to drift. We drift from what matters, we drift from principles, we drift from truth. And this drift doesn't happen overnight. It's slow, it's subtle, and it often goes unnoticed until something breaks. The current global shaking, the economic instability, the rise of moral confusion, the spiritual emptiness that seems to suffocate modern life is the inevitable result of that long drift. And while it feels catastrophic, it is also, paradoxically, an opportunity. Let's begin with the economic side of this shaking because it's something everyone can feel. Inflation, market collapses, widening wealth gaps, these are all part of the story. But economics is never just about money. It is about trust. It is about faith in the systems that govern our exchanges, and when that trust erodes, panic follows. The current financial crises are not purely material failures. They are failures of integrity, failures of leadership, failures of collective morality. When greed replaces stewardship and short-term gain replaces long-term wisdom, collapse is inevitable. And yet, as destructive as economic turmoil can be, it is often the least damaging aspect of such global upheavals. More insidious is the moral shaking that accompanies it. We live in an era where the traditional markers of right and wrong have been blurred to the point of non-existence. Principles that once guided human behavior, honor, responsibility, sacrifice, have been replaced by a culture of entitlement, victimhood, and superficial gratification. People no longer ask, "Is this right?" They ask, "Does this make me feel good?" Or worse, "Does this make me look good in the eyes of others?" That shift may seem subtle, but it is devastating. When morality is untethered from any absolute standard, society becomes a ship without a compass, tossed in every direction by the latest cultural winds. And in such a world, truth becomes whatever is most convenient or popular in the moment. This is precisely how deception spreads, how evil masquerades as virtue, and how entire generations lose their way. The spiritual dimension of this shaking is, perhaps, the most profound of all, because beneath the financial instability and the moral confusion lies a deeper crisis, a crisis of meaning. Human beings are wired to seek something higher, something beyond themselves. When that drive is denied or misdirected, when people stop seeking God or transcendence and instead worship power, fame, pleasure, or self, the soul withers. Depression, anxiety, addiction. These are not just psychological afflictions, they are spiritual signals that something essential has been lost. In ancient texts, times of shaking were not seen merely as disasters. They were seen as judgments, but also as invitations. An invitation to return, to realign, to awaken. And I believe this is exactly what we are being called to now. The systems of the world, the fragile towers of wealth, status, and secular identity are crumbling because they were never meant to sustain the human soul. The pain we feel in this shaking is not the end of the story. It is the birth pangs of something new, something essential. But this transformation will not happen automatically. It requires choice. It requires courage. It requires individuals, ordinary people like you, who are willing to stop running from discomfort, to stop numbing themselves with distractions, and to face the uncomfortable questions: who am I? Why am I here? What is the purpose of my life beyond mere survival or consumption? The shaking will force these questions upon all of us sooner or later. The wise do not wait for total collapse before they awaken. The wise begin now. They examine their lives. They realign their values. They choose truth over comfort, meaning over expediency, courage over conformity. And in doing so, they not only survive the shaking, they are transformed by it. This is the great paradox. The shaking, as terrifying as it is also a gift. It strips away illusions. It exposes the false securities we've built our lives around. And in that exposure, we have the chance to build again, this time on solid ground. And so the invitation is clear. Do not fear the shaking. Instead, let it wake you up. Let it bring you back to the foundations of truth, integrity, and faith. Because those who stand in truth will not be easily shaken. They will endure. They will lead. And ultimately, they will prevail.